they don't listen. Now it's drastic, broken with a bang. Salty like they bang. Head up in my face, no space, put it up, I don't fade. I ain't missing no shot, cause I'm always in range.
What's going on, Fortnite fam? Welcome back to the FNCS. That is right. It is time. Major number 3. Now, first off, we got to give you guys a huge welcome because this is it. The final opportunity for duos to try and make it to the Global Championships later on this year. Look at these shining faces we've got here. It's Vivid. It's Kelly. My friends, welcome to Major number 3. Guys, this is a very big moment this year. The last chance to try and make one of the top 10 spots going to the Global Championships later on this year. Let's start easy. How you guys doing?
Oh, doing good, Zeke. And the way you're going ahead and set up this major, coining it like the last chance for any of these competitors to go ahead and qualify for what they all want, for the whole reason that they kind of are playing throughout these majors. It's to qualify to an international in-person event, and major number 3 being the last one. And like you mentioned, only 10 slots available on NA. Who's going to fill those slots? Well, it starts, of course, with qualifier number 1.
Yeah, and you can see with this being the last opportunity to make it to globals that a lot of players are getting a little desperate and maybe even so desperate that they're willing to change their region. I'm sure you guys have already heard over the last few weeks, but we have had plenty of EU and even OCE champions moving on over to North America, potentially for the chance to claim one of those 10 spots going into globals.
That's right. But more on that in a second. First, but let's take a step back, Kelly. You've already got me excited. We got to hold on.
You're right.
Let's start easy. What's changed about major number 3? What's maybe like different coming in? Well, we've got a format here to kind of talk through some of this. But we'll start pretty easy. One of the things I think I'm most excited about, Vivid, is the fact that we're making a return to set lobbies in the weekly finals.
Yeah, exactly. Qualifiers 1 and 2, they're pretty much the same exact thing, right? These teams are looking to get series points to go ahead and qualify them for the upper or the lower round in those semifinals. But the big change, like you mentioned, in qualifiers 1 and 2, round 4 will now feature just top 50 and 6 matches, which is of course that set lobby. And Kelly, this is exciting, right? Because we were kind of missing set lobbies throughout the season, right? Who's going to be performing the best throughout the season? And the best way to kind of dictate that is of course in this type of format. So I'm excited to see what our teams have to show us today.
Yeah, we've already seen some pretty big changes from Major 3 to Major 2, where in Major 2 for round 4, we got to see 250 best duos, all the big names competing. Now, with it just being the top 50, we already have some big names that we're not going to be watching today. Like, of course, Peterbot and Poyo, our reigning champs, didn't make it through. However, if that's one of your favorite teams, or maybe some of your other favorite teams didn't make it into the top 50, do not worry. Just by making it into the top 250, they're earning some series points. So even in round 3, if your team got around 130th place, it's probably confident that they're going to be making it into the semifinals.
All right, okay, so it's fine. And this is just week 1. All right, we also have next week. Everything's fine. No one panic. It's fine. The show is just started. Key reminder there. You did see that right. There is a 3-week break between. So make sure you guys mark your calendars for when we are back with more action. But for now, let's keep the show going. Brand new season is upon us. Maybe you haven't had a chance to check out Fortnite this season. Maybe you're tuning in for the first time. What's up? It's great to have you here. Let's take a look at some of the changes we've seen on the map. Vivid, I don't think there's actually that much that's changed on the map.
You think so?
Yeah, let's bring up the new stuff. Nope, looks the same to me, Vivid.
What about an entire new biome on the southern side of the map? That's, of course, bringing in 3 new mythic POIs and then renaming those steps over there, of course. But let's talk about what the desert actually has to offer for our competitors.
Oh, well, of course, you got to talk about the slurp cacti then. 87 of these cacti will be found on the south side of the map, and they regenerate. So if you can't find any, maybe you just need to wait a little bit. They're going to be able to heal you 30 shield or 30 health. And my favorite thing about the new south side is that you'll find these cacti kind of bunched up together, getting yourself full shields right from the start. But of course, we got to talk about mobility, Vivid.
I mean, these hoops that you can go ahead and launch yourself through, they are so good at rotating. And of course, those mythic POIs, we got the Nitro Dome, Brutal, Beachhead, and Red Line Rig. The most notable thing about these mythic POIs is, of course, those NPC bosses that can spawn here. They drop those medallions. And Kelly, the 3 medallions we have this season, they're definitely different from last season.
Oh yeah, you have the infinite nitro splash, you have the regenerative shields, but most importantly, I think a lot of people were looking toward the unlimited ammo that we saw. However, that might be a little less important now that the boom bolt has been vaulted.
Yeah.
Yeah, 3 new medallions, which means we're going to see 3 different types of playstyles on top of a brand new section of the map. Kelly, you said Nitro. What's that about? What is this Nitro? And, you know, a medallion can give us infinite of it. What is this all about?
Yeah, I mean, we heard everyone loves to move, everyone likes to go fast, so why not go fast all the time and break through walls? It's been a bit interesting. We started off this season, Vivid, with, of course, the gauntlets, being able to break down everyone's builds and crazy mobility, but those have been vaulted, but a new shining light has kind of spawned.
The meta change within the season, like you mentioned, with those Nitro Fists being vaulted, right? Players who were taking them, constantly involving them in their loadouts were like, well, now we have a slot open in our loadout. What can we do? Kind of supplement that, and of course it's going to be the Nitro effect. So now the meta for the past week or so, our players, they've adapted very quickly, and they've started to carry those Nitro splashes, which will of course give you unlimited tactical sprint and the ability to just break into any box you kind of want to. And let me tell you, that sounds just as crazy as it really is.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun time. Nitro, new map, new POIs, new medallions. So much has changed here in Chapter 5, Season number 3. Now, you guys also kind of mentioned previous champions. And, you know, champions here in Fortnite who've already qualified to the Global Championships. They're looking to kind of take hold of some of these POIs. Now, not all of them will be competing here today, but let's take a look to see which of our previous champions have already claimed these new POIs.
Exactly. These are going to be the teams that have already qualified to global championships, and not included on this map towards Reckless Relay is going to be Reet and Ritual, but we got CANALE, Cooper, Acorn and Cold, Peterbot and Pollo, and because these teams have already qualified to global championships, in the grand scheme of things, they don't really have anything to quote-unquote play for. I mean, of course, we got the FNCS prize money on the line, but nobody's going to want to contest a team that's already qualified to the global championships. But of course, Kelly, you can only get those uncontested POIs if you actually make it into round number 4.
Yeah, a lot of people, the dialogue going around the Red Line Rig is the biggest POI of this new season, but Peterbot and Pollo, who were landing there, are not going to be there because they didn't make it into round 4. So now we have players like D-Roller and Crackly, and if NA is anything like what we get to see from EU, is that some of these teams are probably going to be changing up their drop spot. I can't imagine that POI being uncontested, especially if Peterbot and Pollo aren't there.
Ooh, okay, all right. I like this. Let's start fighting over some POIs now. Before we continue the conversation, I wanted to do a little check-in here with our casters to say what's up. You know them, you love them. It's Monster D-Face and the Best Taco.
Thank you, Zeke, and that's all right. I love that we're really hitting on this theme of new, right, Taka, because we have a lot of new players as well jumping in to compete for this season, so I think we can expect the unexpected.
Yeah, it's actually absurd when you really boil it all down, just how many shakeups occurred throughout the course of NA because of the ripple effect that was created by the invasion of the EU players. But it's a brand new competitive meta, MDF. Just about anything goes, especially whenever Nitro is involved.
Yeah, the Nitro splashes are going to make for some very interesting moments and possibly even more fun clips, of course, to capture here throughout the duration of the broadcast and the event today. So I'm looking forward to seeing what NA has in store for us, Zeke. In particular, like we said, there is a lot of new stuff that, of course, we're going to be keeping our eye on.
Thank you guys so much. And one of those new things that Kelly kind of teased at the start of the show there was the fact that we've got teams from other regions coming over to NA, trying to compete here on our familiar territory. If you watched EU, you got a hint of it already. You know what's happening, but many teams from EU have decided we're going to look to compete. We're looking to try and claim one of those 10 spots to globals through NA. Guys, we're not letting that happen.
Well, I don't know if they're going to be able to be stopped. I mean, let's be honest. Some of the teams that have formed with this kind of merging or this kind of move over from EU to NA is pretty crazy. I mean, look at the caliber of names that we're seeing, right? We're used to seeing some of these EU names, other region teams towards the top of the leaderboard on their respective region, and they've come over to NA, Kelly. I mean, we've got some crazy duos formed.
We do, and of course, if we're going to look to the competitive side of Fortnite, we have to look to two of the best players in their respective regions, is Vino and Clix. And if you looked at their Cash Cup performances, it was pretty good. We got to see a 22nd place and a 20th place coming out of that duo. But for me, it was the improvement between the Cash Cups and the qualifiers. I actually got to watch a lot of their games for the Cash Cups, and there just seemed to be a little bit of a disconnect disconnect going on with their synergy and their communication. But going into the qualifiers, those vibes just did a 180. I'm really impressed with what they were able to do. But Vivid, we have to talk about round 3 because there was a very polarizing performance from them.
Yeah, I mean, after their first 6 games played, I mean, everybody was like, yeah, this duo is not qualifying to round 4. I mean, this is crazy. This is one of the strongest duos that have kind of formed this season. And then Clix and Venom were like, you know what, let's go ahead and play the rest of the games off stream. And for some reason, the switch was flipped. Second, 7th place. They clutched up the qual and, of course, are competing here today. Crazy stuff for them. Shout out to them for that comeback.
Man, and an NA and an EU team put together. We've got another one to talk about. Let me see. This says Iamzo and right. No, it doesn't say Rise. It says Iamzo and Tayson. What is going on, Vivid?
I don't know. That's the crazy thing about some of these names, right? It's gonna feel so unnatural to say because we saw Iamzo and Rise. They were dominating throughout Chapter 4. I mean, they were so consistent. FNCS plays very, very well as a duo throughout global championships, but just not satisfied with their performance throughout this chapter so far. And with one of the best players in the world, Tayson, coming over, I mean, Iamzo would be a little bit of a fool to not take the opportunity to team up. And Kelly, they look like one of the strongest duos that have kind of formed this season.
Oh yeah, first place out of the most recent Cash Cup. They got second place out of round 3. They are just so in sync, which seems almost impossible, seeing that they've only been playing together for a few weeks. But I mean, it's Iamzo who some people would argue should have won Major 1, and then Tayson, one of the best players in the world, joining up together. It is going to be absolutely volatile watching these two play. They are just on the aggressive every single game that I've watched them, and I can't wait to see what is going to be happening. And I know a lot of people will say, oh, well, Tayson's going to carry Iamzo, but you need to put some respect on Iamzo's name. He is an absolutely incredible player, and the two of them together are honestly going to be monstrous.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting too is with this list of player names, as we kind of bring them up, just as a refresher, just so you can see them on paper, I think what's interesting is there's going to be kind of a learning curve, right? You've got EU that's kind of used to a certain play style, and then you've got NA that's used to a play style. So not only do these players have to come over and they go, okay, well, I'm used to this, and then you guys do this here, but now I've got a teammate that's also an NA player that's going to be doing what they're already used to. So how do we try and connect and bridge this gap?
Yeah, it's going to be pretty difficult, or maybe it'll be pretty easy, right? Maybe it'll be extremely natural for some of these duos to kind of form. But obviously, some of those strategies coming into play for a lot of these players looking to qualify for the global championship, it's not really exclusive to players moving regions. What about kind of the switch-ups that have happened within the region, Kelly? I mean,
yeah.
Bugha's back to kind of playing with Aviv. We got Muzz and Trashy playing together. Like, I'm super excited for some of these new duos.
Yeah, I love that you bring up Bugha and Aviv because I think a lot of us had big question marks over our head when we saw that they broke up after Major 1 because they got third place. Absolutely incredible. And then in second place, they split up. I think actually Aviv played with 2 different players over Major 2. I think he played with Miro and then Chubbs. And he had a pretty decent performance in the grand finals with Chubbs, but I love to see Bugha back with Aviv here. I think we can see a great performance coming out of them. Obviously, we're going to see that because in round 3, they got first place. They had 3 30 bombs in round 3, which is pretty incredible as well. So seeing if we can bring some of that energy into round 4 out of that duo.
You love to see it. So many big changes coming here in Major number 3. And a nice little tip of the hat there really quickly to Alex and Worthy coming over from OCE. So it's not just EU that wants to try and shake things up. It's apparently also OCE. We are going to have a crazy time here in Major number 3. And again, reminder, set lobbies. So it's no more like just jump in and it's all chaos. We're gonna have some consistency, which is cool. That's what I like to see. But with that being said, you guys know what time it is. We are getting ready to kick off game number 1. We have 6 on today. How does this unfold? Let's find out together. Casters, take it away.
Thank you, Zeke. That's right. Normally we have to wait until land to get a little sample size of the the other regions, but today we have so much to look forward to, of course. And what a treat, Taco, for us to be able to cast over such a variety of players.
Yeah, and not only that, but like the mashup of playstyles as well. Just how well some of these European competitors are able to actually blend their overall playstyle. Because you have to remember, Europe, they've been saying, hey, we're the most competitive region. And while I think that that is very strong argument for that cause, I think at the same time, they're not necessarily on the same note as like Alex and Worthy, because when you factor in, those guys are already qualified to the Global Championship. Technically, they made it through from Oshi, so they have a bailout clause in comparison to some of these NA and EU players.
Yeah, that's right. When you and also just when you don't have that pressure, right? That pressure looming over your shoulders that this is your last chance to actually qualify, it is a much different story. So we'll see as the battle bus is ready for game number 1. All right, here we have it. The qualifier begins now. The NA FNCS is upon us, and I'm just so excited to watch these different regions jump on into the NA server, into this player base, and give us a combination of competitive Fortnite here. Again, a sample that we would only really be treated to an in-person event, an in-person gathering, but not this weekend, Taco.
No, not this weekend. In fact, I think one of our highlight teams are hybrid duos, Clix and Veno. They're looking to start things off pretty hot here. They are contested as well. Roxanne and Daxton could be looking to be the thorn in their side, and have to remember, Sandy Steps is just such an ideal location because for what it's worth, Clix and Veno, they tend to try loot this one out as quickly as possible. They like to make a play, though, for the forecast tower that spawns just a little bit north of where Sandy Steps is actually located.
I love this because you pair up, you know, the forecast tower with someone like Veno, right, who's going to make some of the strongest and best decisions when it comes down to placement. We should see honestly amazing results out of this duo. Let's see if they can, of course, perform. On the other side, though, the brand new drop spot, the red line rig, is fully contested right now. It does look like about 3 teams are landing in this vicinity here. Crackly and DeRoller being one of the more prominent duos here to touch down first, opting to go to the backside of the red line rig. There are some advantages, of course, of being positioned here, but there's a team on the outskirts as well, so not completely safe even in the center, in the heart of the red line rig.
But Daxton and Roxanne, I mean, this is a team that was initially marked for Sandy Steps. So to see them make this adjustment on the fly here to try and join this contest mayhem at red line rig, when there is 4, potentially even 5 teams, you look at that team that's just a little bit south as well of the red line rig, there is not that much loot or resources in general, MDF, in this wasteland area of the desert from these new POIs.
We have seen this before. We've seen teams, you know, play the wild card in game 1 or game 2, try to mix things up and then go back to their old trusty. So a team like, you know, Clix and Veno cannot let their guard down, not by any means right now, but let's focus in on what Crackley's up to right here. Farms up a good amount of metal and then immediately goes for the push right now. Tags coming in from the outskirts, and then the surprise ambush, and it is good for Crackley here to get the 2 eliminations and then turn that around immediately. But remember, he gets the pickup from the loot generated of the down body, so all advantage right now to Crackley and DeRoller.
Still has a couple of shield bubbles to play with too if Crackley feels as if he needs them, but for the time being, content to just sit on top of the box here, gets an angle onto Blanc, and that's an immediate drop. Hammer pump straight to the face, and Crackley just continuing to try and clear out bodies, make things as smooth as possible for himself and DeRoller. And Maxers, he's forced to just full-on retreat. He's gonna have to just come back for the reboot card, if anything. And he knows that Crackley and DeRoller, they're probably gonna stick around because you can see that gear icon marked on the mini-map. That does mean that the Machinist is currently located here at Redline Rig, and when you get a medallion that can regen your shield up to 75 off cooldown, MDF, that's got to be ideal grabs.
Yeah, and that's the other side of this. If you are just tuning in and you're trying to, you know, wrap your head around, why are there so many teams there? That's one of the few POIs that is gonna give away a medallion to you, and those medallions we saw last season can swing some pretty favorable situations your way. But let's jump in with Day and Redux right now. Rotating through the middle of the Underworld, we talked about these extra benefits of staying at a strong POI. There's no surprise that the Underworld dashes here are, of course, some of the more powerful things to take into a fight, but It's all even playing grounds here. Nitro splashes out. Okay, we're seeing the walls already being broken into, and it is on. And before they know it, Day and Redux have the advantage here. This teammate or enemy down low is dead to rights if he can't make a move. And there it is, a trade on both sides here, Taco.
Yeah, Lin tried to see if they could try and escape, but it does come at a little bit of a price here. Day knows. Coast isn't clear just yet. Still needs to take care of Antonio, and Day trying to get an angle. Looking for that right-hand peek, but has to go for the reload. It's going to be Antonio with the absolute turnaround. Day and Redux with an early departure here in Lobby 1. And Antonio still might not even get to celebrate that victory because King 1 hot on his heels. He's got that Nitro Splash effect enabled. Miro going to try and cut him off, and that will be an immediate send back here from King 1. But at the same time, NDF, the damage has already been done.
That was insane. I did not expect, you know, Day to drop that battle right there, especially given that he had the advantage, even of the camera angle, the right-hand peek, just everything going for him. So unfortunate, and it does look like, I think Antonio was picked up there potentially as a cursor just vanished from the map, likely to the hands of Miro there. So that body tag actually made Miro even second guess of whether or not that was a full duo. Jump on over to one of the favorites right now. This team right here, the surprise duo, I would say, of all the combinations, Tayson and Yamzo, absolute elite individuals. Not including the NAC merger, this is the most players to ever change regions in a single season. You know, give that credits to the events that have been happening here in the North America region. So very fun stuff happening right now. It's never been more exciting than this.
The key word, though, is favorites, because Tayson and Yamzo, since they linked up, they have just been absolutely dominating a lot of the competition taking place in North America. And not only that, but they're looking to keep the ball rolling. And another duo that I think has really started to shock the region is definitely Bucky and Okis. Bucky, very open on socials. I'm not going to bother streaming the event, but we know what he is capable of. He wants that redemption arc, and he's looking to find it here in Major 3. Just the fact that he made it through to round number 4, I think, has just put his signature, his stamp back on the map. They are not a duo that teams can afford to overlook.
It's interesting to see someone like Bucky make it this far into the tournament setting when there have been some given upsets, and he's, you know, hit or miss half the times, but, you know, paired up with someone like Okis, I am excited to watch. Here's one of those EU-NA duos, two just kings of their regions. You got Pink here. We got, of course, Miro, the multi-FNCS champion. This is a very, very fun duo to watch. Pink, if you remember, back in the last season, we had some very fun statistics showing accuracy of builds made while in, you know, combat settings, while in fights. Pink was one of the most accurate, so never making the mistake when it mattered most in fights. Paired up with Miro right now, if he's bringing that same kind of energy right to this duo, they could be one of the surprise ones, right, that come out of nowhere.
That's for sure, but again, my heart broke a little bit when I saw Pink and Vico split up, but once I saw the reason why, and the fact that Pink is now united with Miro, that is, again, just another powerhouse team that is bound to cause some disturbances throughout the course of a lobby and just how the map is going to be able to rotate throughout it. Some action taking place from some of these search towers, but right now it's all about Ritual and Reed, but they're not going to be left standing any longer. Ozone, a little bit of an upset play here, holding his own up against the likes of some of NA's finest, and Lawrence definitely cheering his duo on the entire time. There is no better feeling, no better surge of momentum either, Monster, than watching your duo win a play like that.
We're seeing a lot of clutches from the, what I would call the underdog duos in some of these clashes here. We jump in with Snacky in Magia. Got to watch a lot of fun gameplay from Magia last FNCS finals. He pushed through the qualification of those lower brackets. If you remember, one of the last few to grab that slot. Switching up the teammate now with Snacky. Snacky was, of course, a veteran But ever since the region's merger, he's been having a harder and harder time, really picking up a standout performance, as things have only grown more increasingly difficult here on the NA region. Got to be careful, though. It's the team lurking right above. LASCIATE has to be calling something out here, but Snacky isn't putting up walls. I was a bit concerned there. Yamzo gets a few tags. What do you think is going to happen here?
This could be a potential key in, but Yamzo and Tayson, a team that definitely just likes to collect their surge, clearly have some white heal resources. Yamzo going to toss that med kit forward. Prioritization seems to be more so on just controlling the direction that that team behind them actually ends up rotating. Their backside now completely clear. They forced Snacky and Miglior to essentially push even further west of their current position. So they'll have a slightly easier time whenever they enter the edge of zone, knowing that they're not going to have to necessarily worry about that duo trying to pressure them from their back. But Cold and Acorn, they've got a really nice spot currently fixated here just outside of Restored Reels, and with that thermal scope on Hunter's DMR, Cold trying to get some connections. At the very least, he's forcing a little bit of a burn of mats from the players that he's shooting at.
These are some hugely missed opportunities right now, and I say that because Cold and Acorn have positioned himself somewhat center, right, away from what would be the congested zone, the edges. So these missed tags could come back to bite them or haunt them later in the game. We'll see. And we're going to watch a lot of Storm fights in this current state of the season. You have the Cactus, of course. Those regenerate on a very specific timer. So we're going to find a lot of teams really comfortable with taking these battles where you otherwise wouldn't inside the Storm. Heals aside, but look at this. We jumped away for a moment. The rotate. Ooh, Blah gets caught there by Tayson and Yamzo.
That is a tough break and a little bit heartbreaking as well for Blaha Mixon. But again, it is only lobby 1 of 6, and it is kind of cool to see Blaha Mixon actually with their reunion tour here in Chapter 5, Season 3, given that the last time we saw them play a finals for FNCS was Chapter 4, Season 3, and they've competed in a handful of FNCS finals as a duo, so looks like they're just trying to re-establish some of that original chemistry they once had. Granted, it's going to be a little bit more difficult with Mixon operating as a solo, but it definitely is still just early enough, MDF. He does have a possible opportunity to play for that reboot ban.
We'll see it happen. Meanwhile, Vino and Clicks playing deep in the Storm right now, stoking the fire, trying to get as much HP as possible here for the rotate. They're going to be exposed off that launch pad, so hopefully there isn't anyone lurking too far behind. Meanwhile, Paka. Paka's got this high ground tower pretty much positioned out. He's going to be leveled up. It does seem like with the Rift Island that's going to be popping in here any moment now.
Yikes.
Someone chop this down? What just happened?
Well, the spawn in of Rift Island, Vorteca immediately going to take that Ascender. Paco will opt to just build up ample amounts of trees for him to refarm those mats. It's really all about playing for the capture point at this current location. I mean, it's in a pretty optimal spot as well, given that their drop is at the Lavish Lair. They didn't really have to move too far away from their starting location, but at the same time, that could be detrimental for their search strategy overall. So maybe playing for the Rift Island, they're kind of just hoping another team will just look to try and contest them so they can get some damage if they still need it.
Big rotate coming out right here. Worthy to Alex. They already have 2 eliminations as well, so getting active here. Ooh, using the tunnels to hit the big rift here alongside the boost. It's going to put them in a good spot. Trying to find themselves away from the edges here.
And again, Paco, Vorteca, potentially hoping for a fight. Seems like it's definitely been delivered right on their front doorstep. Vanillas and Convic trying to bide their time. A little bit of Fullberry juice going to be necessary as now Vanilla's making the drop. Top side of the cone for the time being, but again, building right back up. Seems as though Vanilla's is just content to hold this slight height position, maybe get a few surge tags from teams that are surrounding the outskirts of that underside of Rift Island, but when you know that there's another duo directly underneath you, you can't ever feel that comfortable. And now, again, one more time, Vanilla's trying to see if they can maybe look for more of a side angle approach, potentially. Surely they're not going to want to sit for much longer here.
This is slowly becoming worse and worse right now for Convic and company. I mean, he's using a lot of material. Paco and Tekka here are already on the, way out, essentially, as they're trying to get their material. So these are two teams that are desperate for material that both haven't had the time to actually farm up just yet. And this is why Paco is recognizing, okay, I got to get these, brick reservoirs locked in now before someone else does. Meanwhile, on the other side, Bryson Bolts, full-on clash up against Duke right here. Sphinx is already taken down. Bolts content with the finish here. Duke's now angry as ever. Breaking through the builds, tries to turn and burn, but not good enough there. Bryson Bolts get the elimination and the full credit for one. And that's going to set themselves up for a good mid-game now.
It's definitely a nice little refresh delivery, but the fact that Dukes is in that position in the first place leads me to believe that him and Sphinx had encountered some early difficulties for their surge strategy. Still, plenty more games for them to play out. Again, only lobby 1 of 6, and the damage threshold for Storm Surge. Vanilla's trying to get active, but it's not the same team. It's actually going to be Flix and Pilot that Vanilla's and Convic have set in their sights now. Convic looking to see if he can close in onto Pilot, but that's going to be an immediate rift out. Pilot nearly down, just needs one more tag to confirm it, but Vanilla's, he's not going to be able to find it just yet.
I really, really love the aggression that we see play out, but Vanilla's all of a sudden gets turned right back around on him. Looks like he's already lost the effects of his nitros, and he is on the run here.
Look at the builds. He's got 3 builds to work with here. Has to hope that Convic comes up big. And Convic does. DJ
someone completely different.
Just dropped in out of nowhere, straight out of left field, honestly. And that's going to be a big sigh of relief, though, for Convic and Vanilla's. Split the mats almost immediately. Just try and recuperate some of what they lost in the process. And it looks as though Pilot and Flakes, they were able to bail out entirely. Mixin now going to find himself in the same position that Baja was earlier on in this match, fully eliminated. But their gameplay is still going as long as Blaha is still standing. And with that Nitro Splash in effect, might help Blaha close the gap to find a slightly better position.
See how fast Chimp and Scissors jumped in on Blaha's box right there, by the way.
Yes.
Had he not decided to move, that was it. So very, very great decision making there to go in and get pretty much dead center right now. Hound and Mason jump on what was left of his teammates' loot here. You have options. Extra Nitro Splash to utilize here as well. Meanwhile, in the Storm, hello, Buga. How are things looking for you? Looks like he's trying to hit the little reboot van here to get a Vive back in the game. Seems like things are going south for Vive and Buga right now.
Definitely not what you would expect, especially considering that this duo for round 3, they led in first place with 676 points. Tayson and Iamzo, round 3, they were second up, but they had 541. A pretty distinct gap that is a big indicator that Aviva and Buga, they've definitely locked in on a successful strategy for themselves for as to how they want to play this competitive meta, but that is a massive setback when you have to play for the reboot this deep into the match. So many players already getting situated inside of zone. Players claiming the low ground, players claiming the edges, and they're going to have a little bit more influence for some of those late stragglers like Aviv and Buga when they start trying to rotate in for exactly where they can rotate through.
It's pretty exciting seeing Miro and Pink in such a strong position as far as overall material, loadout, look is concerned. You know, we haven't really gotten to highlight Miro in the last few seasons. But let's jump in with Rise here. No Ager, solo right now. Still somehow above the threshold with the elimination, so things looking pretty nice. All things considering here for Rise is he's not going to have too much to worry about this zone. The time to move is now. Shows the rest of his teammates loot. He's going to pick up what he can here. Oh. Like, how do you prepare for that one? You didn't even
Don't.
hear them coming. Just see the builds get broken straight into.
It's so chaotic, and poor Rise, man. He just popped one Nuka-Cola, already forced to expend his second one. A very valuable resource for a solo at that, and now he's just down to 2 final splashes. He's got at least 95 left in that Club Rate Fizz, but at the same time, Monster, without any sort of white heals, he's essentially forced to try and play on the backside. He's looking for a slightly later rotate, hoping that nobody notices him, kind of ending up towards the edge of zone a little bit after the fact. And I like this slow play position, though, from Rise, and wouldn't be surprised to see him come up with something big.
I just love how the Nitro Splash is so valuable. Even though he's solo, he's like, I'm not using it yet. If I can get it without it, I'm going to do that first. Seeing how there's still hope in the game here. Meanwhile, Acorn and Cold, long awaited in the storm. Nice and safe here. The first to put pressure on those on the outskirts here. Wow, holding strong though. Continuing to make very good decisions. Finding himself zone to zone now, inching his way towards the first set of placements. Meanwhile, Shadow comes blasting his way into Hound's box there. A little bit of damage as he starts to float across. Look at the elimination counts here for Iamzo and Tayson. 5 so far for the duo.
900 above as well for that Storm Surge threshold. They are sitting pretty, especially with this kind of loadout. Iamzo taking a look up, peeping where height is actually located, and now probably only a matter of time before Iamzo and Tayson look to either make a play for it themselves or just claim it outright. They've got Pink and Miro in their sights. They're gonna opt to rotate through the low ground for the time being when so many Nitro Splashes at their disposal. They're gonna be able to pick their moment at the perfect time, hopefully. Have to wait and see how that plays out for them, but Ozone Lawrence, we saw Ozone with a massive clutch earlier on up against the likes of Reet and Ritual, and it seemingly paid off, seeing them this deep into the endgame. But Pink and Miro, they have quite the high ground build established.
I want to know whose idea was this. This
Stinking.
is a crazy ramp out. Set up. Solidified right now. Aviv, super hurt. Just misses the opportunity to pick up the elimination right there. A lot of damage players right here. That's a massive tag as well. So surge concerns, none for Pink and Miro right now, but finding eliminations and getting refreshes are going to be a big one on the mines right here. Meanwhile, the low ground, Tayson and Iamzo. Like virtually unlimited Nitro Splashes right now for these zones right now. There's only 3 zones left. They could pop these almost indefinitely if they wanted to at this point. Just play out the low ground positioning. Front side of zone, love where Acorn and Cold are. Also putting themselves below the terrain to not be broken into, you know, those indestructible land masses are going to be so crucial to recognize. The little things.
Almost wondering, well, we just found out Pink no longer with Miro. That's gonna be a Nuka-Cola that he'll be forced to use as well, and it's gonna actually be Bucky and Okus that have seemingly overtaken height for the time being. Granted, Bucky probably wishing he had a little bit more material count, but at the same time, MDF, this is a strong position. It's all about suppressing that secondary height. Clix and Veno seeing if they could try to make a push of their own. Bucky, though, that's gonna be his last Underworld dash that he had readily to use. Iamzo and Tayson as well. See them pushing ever steadily. 1 layer up, 2 layers up. And again, wouldn't be too surprised to see them try and make that same play for the high ground that we just saw Bucky and Okus go for.
And they have the maps to do it. They actually have the maps to out marathon, if you will, Bucky and Okus's position right now. Meanwhile, Pink just staying alive. Cold and Acorn from the front side of zone get the advantage of teams rotating towards them. They find Noxy here, and that's going to recap them as well. Very, very rarely do we see a game stretch this late with these amounts of duos and this much material count to work with. So we're going to see that no one is safe right now on high ground by any means, just given the amount of material count here on some of these elite duos that are still in the game right now.
And just look at all the Flowberry Fizz that Cold had there. Bucky and Okus, though, they've done a decent job so far. They've been holding their ground here up above the rest of the lobby. But again, with Nitro Splashes in effect, Monster, you have to expect that it is only a matter of time before another team decides to try and barrel through or look to possibly chop them down from height. Crackly and the Roller now looking to try and control the low ground, but bam! Snacky not gonna allow that anytime. Now the Roller, he's forced to play out his medkit, and he's just trying to outlast the Storm at this point.
Yeah, he's gonna have to walk his way to the edge here to stay alive. He's just stealing away placement points while he can. Meanwhile, Acorn and Cold get broken apart here. Acorn by himself now. The prime positioning, unfortunately, not going his way this time around. Finds a moment to jump onto Magia, grabs the wall, finishes him, has to defend up against Snacky, gets the finish. Those are the desperate points that he was looking for here. And Snacky, although he has the splashes here, he did not find a successful way into the build here. I don't know how Acorn is still standing, but he does remain in the conversation right here. So far, so good. Meanwhile, on high ground, Snacky finds the high ground position. Bucky and Okus broken apart as well. Okus is down now. And it's looking like all solos minus Tayson and Iamzo.
Tayson and Iamzo thought they were going to make a play for height sooner, but it seems as though they were content to just completely control the low ground instead. Tayson, again, finding another knock, just assisting alongside of Iamzo. Both of these players, though, doing such an excellent job at tarping forward. They've got completely uncontested ground laying out in front of them. It's only Acorn with 4 HP just about as they break through his shield. But Acorn trying to make a massive play. Good side jump. Snacky actually going to be the one to find Tayson, though, in the feed.
Finishes him off there, and just like that, Acorn levels the playing field. Look at the HP counts. No one is safe. Iamzo falls into low ground, and now it's Vino, the king of EU here on the NA region, looking to lock in this first win potentially, but Snacky dips into the Storm with the early heal here. It was a little too early though, if you ask me. Vino walking his way, the smarter move to stay alive. It hits the shot for the credit of the elimination there in the end.
That's just extra points at the end of the day, MDF. Veno likely wasn't sure if it was going to come down to a heal off or not, but I'm right there with you. Snacky just a little bit too preemptive with that medkit. At the same time, though, the chaoticness that unfolded, so many solos just forced to try and duke it out at the end there.
One thing we love about Vino, the confidence, right? He's been talking about how he's going to show up here on the NA region. You know what? When the pressure's on, when we're in these set lobbies here, this is where he shines best. Decision making at an all-time